This episode contains graphic or explicit content that may be disturbing, violent, or sexual in nature. Listener discretion is advised.
You're in the place where mysteries and the missing meet, where conspiracies lurk around every corner. Welcome to the Deep, Dark Truth.
Welcome back to the Deep Dark Truth. I'm Mikey.
I'm Mo.
And I'm Chip.
And that went surprisingly well for somebody recording that isn't me. Fantastic.
Rude. It always goes exactly as planned when I do it.
I'm going to be covering something today that I don't think either of you have heard much about or anything about, but I think everyone has heard about Jeffrey Epstein, accused of being sex trafficking young girls on a mysterious island.
Stop.
Yeah.
Pause. Future Mo's gonna cut back to just Jeffrey Epstein. All we knew is that it was called Fox Island. So both me and Chip has assumed that the island is just named Fox Island, or there's very cute foxes all over this island. Maybe it's a cryptid fox. Maybe it's a whole bunch of fox murderers that if you come on their island, they eat you. Was not mentally prepared to talk about Jeffrey Epstein. So let me just readjust my expectations really quick.
Yeah, it's deep.
And we're breathing
it's
in.
Deep.
This is so much more disappointing.
And we're breathing out.
Just pull up some pictures of foxes to look at while we record.
I think that'll make it more upsetting.
So, trafficking, young girls, mysterious private island, Little James Island, yada, we've all at least been exposed to that in some degree. But
capacity,
what you haven't probably heard is the connection to some internet detectives to a very similar island with an uncanny familiar story right here in our home state, Mo, in Michigan. Yeah. So today we'll be diving into the deep dark truth about Fox Island in Lake Michigan. Fox Islands are uninhabited and consist of North and South Fox Island, approximately 17 miles northwest of Cathead Point, near the Leelanau Peninsula, and 10 miles southwest of Beaver Island.
Give me a wear on the hand.
The Leelanau Peninsula is when we went to Sleeping Bear, right above, where we were saying Travers, there's a peninsula that goes out. It's kind of where we went to Marty's Vineyard.
Upper.
Yeah. Okay. And these three little islands form a little archipelago. But for this podcast, we're going to be discussing North Fox Island, which is only 2 miles wide and only 1 mile long. It is currently owned by the state of Michigan and is part of the Beaver Island State Wildlife Research Area. Now, let's go back in time to the 1970s to see what was secretly going on in North Fox Island.
Gone Epstein, and we're in the 70s.
It's just a comparison because of the similarities. That's why I was bringing up Epstein, because it's very similar in that he had a private island that he owned. The similarities are uncanny. North Fox Island was purchased by a millionaire and former Michigan Air National Guard airman named Francis D. Sheldon in 1960 when he outbid the state of Michigan. According to the Detroit Free Press, the state offered $3,500 to an elderly widow who owned the island. He would pay her $20,000, claiming that he wanted isolation.
I bet he did.
Well, he got it, and the first thing that he would build on this island was an airstrip.
There's not enough room for more than just an airstrip. You've taken up the whole island.
It is pretty big. Let me just give you a picture of this airstrip. It doesn't even run a third of this island, and the airstrip obviously has to be pretty decently long. Okay. So this is the island, and the airstrip is that line.
It's built for normal aircraft landing, not probably commercial or anything like that, but
not a lot of Boeing.
A little background. Sheldon was a descendant of Russell Alger, a lumber baron in Michigan, a governor of Michigan, a secretary of war. He would be described in 1975 by the Detroit Free Press would describe him as having a hefty trust fund, a Yale degree, and a master's from Wayne State University. He would be interviewed and would speak about the hard work that went into Fox Island and how you how you learn what silence means. He also stated that when it came to tax season, he knew that he would be crucified for the private island.
If only.
Yeah. Launching officially in 1975, Brother Paul's Nature Camp was established. It would be a charitable program that brought children to the island in summer to experience true Michigan nature, as well as counseling, tutoring, temporary lodging, boarding retreats, and emergency care for runaways.
Before we get to what happens, this is just a PSA for every single parent that listens to our show. Do not send your kids out anywhere. Do not send your kids to a boot camp. Do not send them to anywhere where they're going to stay and live there for more than 3 weeks. You do not know who has access to your children. And there are so many tales of abuse coming out of different camps and religious organization camps. Stop.
I second this.
Yeah, I could read my report, but we all know it's bullshit. It would eventually, be discovered that this was not the only thing happening on this island or had anything to do with this island. So let's meet another. Gerald Richards was a Catholic school gym teacher, aspiring politician who performed as a magician on the side.
I don't think Catholicism allows for that.
I didn't write this. I didn't make this up.
Sir.
I do actually think that sleight of hand magic does not count as witchcraft magic.
But where did he get that card? It wasn't there a minute ago.
Sleight of hand, there is a actual thing that the magicians are doing versus trying to manifest something and, quote unquote, calling another deity or blah, blah, blah. You're not invoking anything else, if that makes sense.
This Gerald Richards was basically tasked with luring children to Fox Island, including his own students, promise of hiking, swimming, learning about nature. He would later plead guilty to charges of first-degree criminal sexual conduct and would testify about his involvement in Michigan's pedophile community, and also that Brothers Paul was just a front for victimizing children, as well as evasion of taxes. Before his arrest in July of 1976, police records would reveal that he contacted and warned Sheldon, who promptly disappeared, was sentenced to 20 years.
I just wanted to hear about foxes.
I live here. I go to Travers all the time. I go to the Leland Isle Peninsula all the time. I did not think that this episode would be this. I didn't know any of this. And I'm very confused.
This is why we do this.
As to why I have not heard about it before.
There's more, and after this episode, you're going to be asking even more questions. But they weren't the only two men in on this ring.
Shocking.
Dyer Grossman was a wealthy science teacher at Harvey School, and Adam Starchild, which was a convicted fraudster alias, he was an offshore accounts expert as well as a former Boy Scout assistant scoutmaster, but his real name was Malcolm McConaughey. He was also accused of helping Sheldon, and in this case, he was to create shell companies, including the Phoney Church of New Revelation and the Ocean Living Institute. Offshore, shell companies to basically evade taxes and treat all as if it's nonprofit and community and helping community. J. Reuben Appelman wrote a book called The Kill Jar. It is a product of 10 years of investigation into the Oakland County child killings. Have you guys heard of those before?
Absolutely.
Well,
we'll cover the Oakland County child killer at some point on this podcast.
And this is a great segue into piquing our listeners into that. So in his book, he covers North Fox Island and their connection between the two. And it is widely accepted by a good majority now that the two are directly linked together. According to him, North Fox Island operated as a subscription service centered on the production of child pornographers and sexual abuse on boys 7 years old to 16-year-old. In exchange for contributions to the Brothers Paul nonprofit, the camp, sponsors could receive pornography shot on the island or even visit the island themselves if they were particularly wealthy or well-connected. A Michigan State Police report would reveal an underage victim who claimed Sheldon himself tried to molest him multiple times and reported fighting him off those times as well. Further after his arrest, Richards would reveal all, and in a Traverse City Record, Eagle reported that in 1977, 300 sponsors donated to Sheldon's charity and received child pornography for their tax-deductible contributions.
I hope every single one of those 300 people were prosecuted, but I somehow doubt it.
I doubt it as well, but I do not know the answer. Also in that year, they discovered that Sheldon was also a sponsor for the Boys Farm in Winchester, Tennessee, which was run by Claudius Vermeil, an Episcopal priest, and also known as Father Bud. He was also charged with molestation and possession of underage pornography. Furthermore, And even more disgusting, the record eater would uncover a letter from Grossman, who is his, offshore accounts expert, basically, to Sheldon outlining how a person could set up lucrative organizations similar to the brothers Paul in their respective states.
Boys Farm as a name just sounds a little too on the
Doesn't
nose.
it? And Father Bud was the nickname of the priest that was in charge of this boys' farm. Nobody thought anything of this.
They wouldn't. Do you want to know why? Giving yourself a nickname makes you very relatable to people, and they're less likely to suspect you. Father Bud showing up and talking to your kid, having conversations with your kids in front of you that make them seem like they're a mentor figure, and they're just Father Bud or Father Nick or Father whatever the fuck. Not Nick.
It's very rude.
It's a very casual relationship. Instead of raising a red flag, it kind of does the opposite. Like, oh, they're really getting down on my kids' level and trying to relate to them and bring them to God. Blah,
He's chill,
blah, blah.
you know.
Yeah.
He's not, doesn't have a stick up his ass. Oh.
So, without getting too much into the Oakland County child killings, which occurred in 1976 and 1977, a lot of people will say, well, there's not really connection because this was after Sheldon was already had run and disappeared and fled from Michigan. The connection that they made was with Chris Bush, a very well-connected and well-off son of H. Lee Bush, a financial director for GM over 4 decades in Europe and in U.S. Very, very well off.
And he is believed to be the Oakland County child killer.
Right. And
hear more about him on our episode on the Oakland County child killer coming
eventually.
Yeah, when we cover that, we can also cover into more about how they're much more connected. But in this concept, I just want to kind of paint a picture that this was a large, lucrative operation with a community involved in on it.
You sure have. You have succeeded.
To think that it didn't go past just Fox Island and just that one city in Michigan and that one city in Tennessee is crazy. And I'm sure that some of them that may have gotten started through this ring or operated extensively or inextensively or whatever may still be around to this day. And that's a scary thought. That's a very scary thought.
I would bet money on it.
I would bet a tax credit.
So Sheldon was never arrested. He fled to France in 1976. He would marry right away to Aileen Goby in order to obtain French citizenship. And he would then move to Amsterdam to live out his life unhindered by the U.S. or any police involvement or anything like that. He would die in 1996 from unknown causes.
Wait, so do we know that he actually even died then? If they never found his remains?
It said that Amsterdam police investigated and searched and did say that he died from unknown causes, but where his remains is not known today.
Not known publicly?
I was going to say, so this might be a situation where he no longer had family or anything in Amsterdam.
Or personally did not want anyone to know where his body would rest at.
Yeah, but I feel like Amsterdam police, if another government agency questioned it, they would just tell them.
Yeah, it said that they investigated. I don't know if it was investigating into his cause of death or like things attached to this, which probably not attached to this, probably just cause of death, to be honest. They probably didn't even know.
Especially in the year one, we're talking about they're setting something up before the age of the internet. So they have figured out a way how to distribute child pornography before the internet exists. 2, the sharing of interagency information across countries when they didn't know where he went. They just never would have known. Like, those agencies never would have spoken until eventually somebody finds out where he was living, where he went, etc. And just the chances of that happening really were not good before the age of the internet and, like, central databases in the way that we have them now.
It's just the unknown cause of death that is really sticking in my teeth. What do you mean they investigated and decided on unknown? You know, you're always saying I'm bringing the show down, but then Mikey keeps coming in with these, like, punches to the jaw.
Mikey normally isn't like this, though, but you are. So
I have done 0 pedophile episodes.
I found something that Mo didn't know about that I know she'd be like, what?
Yeah, I can't believe that I've never heard about the link to Like the Oakland County child killer.
Yeah. So that's Fox Island, and not cute foxes.
What to say? So what eventually happened to this island? Now the state of Michigan owns it.
And it's a research
Did
wildlife
they
area.
seize it?
I don't know.
Wait, did you say how they were discovered? Who tattled? What was the series of events that went, oh, I'm fleeing to France now?
The guy who gave him a heads up
Right.
that they were investigating him, the gym teacher.
Right.
I didn't also mention this, but the guy Mo was talking about and Sheldon was a big brother. That's also how he funneled boys
Well, of course they were.
in there. And there's also documentation of him just taking boys all over the world with him, not just to Fox Island.
Already got a private island for your evil. Why elsewhere?
So the island was purchased by a real estate investor named David Johnson in 1994 for $2.2 million. It was bought for $1.3 million, and then by the time they sold
But
it,
whose was it until 1994?
I'm going to guess it was his, because it wasn't uncovered until, 1996? So I'm going to guess he had possession of the island. He sold the island before he fled. I'm going to guess. Let me try and get some property records.
All I know is all 300 of those sponsors should have been prosecuted. We should know about this, Mo. As children who grew up here, we should know about this. We don't. That's sad.
I do think that when we were kids, I think I was probably 13 or so before I knew about the Oakland County child killer. Also, I was about 12 when I found out. So there is a local case where a mother killed all of her children. My dad not only went to school with those children, but my dad was at the scene of the crime. He was a paper boy, and he delivered a paper most likely minutes after these kids were killed when he was a little kid. I didn't know about that either until I was about 12. So I think a lot of these things, my parents, they taught me stranger danger, but they didn't go too hard, you're going to get murdered anytime you walk out of the door. I did get the talks about various things, but also my parents probably didn't even know about this, to be honest, because I've always been interested in true crime and things like that, but my parents weren't, mostly. My mom also watched Unsolved Mysteries, but she wasn't interested in the same way that I was,
Right.
Following cases and...
She wouldn't start a true crime podcast.
Right, exactly. She cared because they were children,
Right.
But if it wasn't highly publicized on the regular 6 o'clock news, especially before the age of our 24-hour news cycle, prior to the O.J. Simpson case, I don't think she would have known about it. Everyone knew about the Oakland County child killer, but it was just a different level. It was on every newspaper in the Tri-County area. So I'm trying to get the property ownership records, but I don't have parcel numbers, so it's just not giving me what I would like. A weird other layer to this is that Fox Island, Beaver Island, a lot of the islands in the Great Lakes, they have indigenous names, have rich indigenous culture that is linked to them and how they got their names, like Sleeping Bear Dunes, the story of dead bears. There's all of these rich histories that are associated, and for some rich person to just come in and basically buy an island and then turn it into Camp Pedophile. I know that that's not the most important aspect of the story, but it's such a perversion of that cultural history.
It's a real macrocosm thing.
Yeah.
This man was invested. He bought it in 1960. He put 10 to 15 years of his own hard labor developing this island.
Yeah, it was something that he had obviously thought out, obsessed over. How do I do this? How do I make this? And can I profit from it? How do I be a sick fuck and also profit from that?
Yeah. And he was in the public eye.
So it seems like he most likely, before he was caught or could be caught, sold it to this real estate mogul who then sells it back to the state of Michigan. That could be incorrect, but it seems like through various documents that we could find through Leelanau County, et cetera, that was most likely the events because of the timeline of when it was purchased by this real estate mogul. So he's probably trying to get money.
Murata currently owns most of this island. There are bits of it that are state of Michigan.
Reading the exact same thing that Mikey was reading about the state of Michigan buying it back from this mogul. I think the state of Michigan reserved some places and then sold off. They'll sell off their assets of various things that they aren't going to turn into like state parks. So I think that they probably then sold pieces of it.
State of Michigan owns the coast, and
which does make sense because there's a lot of islands that they own the entirety, but they also own coastlines. They turn those into public access, so you can launch boats and get to and from places, or ferries will come, especially these islands that are in the middle, like Bois Blanc or Mackinac Island, that are islands that people have to access them, people live on them. So there needs to be some amount of public access, and the state usually owns those public access points. Well, thank you for the depression on top of my seasonal depression. I didn't think that this is what this was going to be, but I am glad to know about it. Later, when we talk about the Oakland County child killer, have this as a point to refer back to. How do you stop a episode so depressing? We don't know. Until next time, I'm Mo.
I'm Chip.
And I'm Mikey.
I am not the most depressing person on this podcast by far.
You just listened to the Deep Dark Truth Podcast. See you next time. And remember, your local cryptids want to meet you.